Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with your hot take of the headlines. We're going to blast through the headlines and figure out and make snarky comments and do all kinds of things. But don't forget, the forbidden news is on Bitchute and Rumble. See, I got to make another video off of YouTube because YouTube is crushing us. They are crushing us. They don't seem to bother. I guess they're not bothering my movie videos, but they're definitely crushing my YouTube stuff. So go over to BitChute and Rumble, check out those, and we got lots to talk about in this, including Antifa. This is mostly going to be Antifa and riots and that kind of stuff. But let's get through some other headlines. For you Pineys out there, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy pushes ammo purchase database 50 caliber rifle ban. Doesn't surprise me. Murphy, why not? He's super liberal. He's super left, and now he's pushing it in his hopefully his final days in office. He is up for re-election in November. If God forbid you live in New Jersey and you vote for Murphy, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. But I won't go into the whole thing. Watch any of my Piney podcasts, and I'm sure you'll hear me rant against Murphy. He's just terrible. But 50 caliber rifle ban. Yeah, that'll really stop the shooting in the inner city, you moron. Joe Biden overrules staff plan, raises refugee inflow. Yeah, you've effed the bed on this. Effed the bed. S the bed on this entire immigration thing. You're so stupid, Joe Biden. All you had to do was not do anything. Not do anything. You could have just quietly started to maybe dismantle some of the immigration stuff. And then you could have give lip service to your base, and then, you would have had a border that was at least partially under control. What he's done is he's created a crisis. It wasn't enough. Trump essentially put the cork on the bottle. Biden came along, took off the cork, and shook the whole thing up. And now it's just an effing mess. It's just an effing mess. Pro-migration Democrats and business allies got President Joe Biden to quickly overrule Friday announcement by his top staff that would have capped the 2021 inflow of refugees at 15,000. And they're just lying. I'm so sick of reading Jen Psaki's stuff. She just lies. She just straight up lies. She's in over her head. She's a pathetic mess. And you could argue like McKinney lied too for Trump, but at least she was good at it. My God, Jen Psaki just looks always so flustered and annoyed that you're bothering her at work. I mean, really? Is this what the way you thought it would be? It's just amazing that some of these people think the job's going to be easy and then get annoyed at you when it's not. From antiwar.com, one of my favorite websites, by the way. Pentagon unclear if contractors will leave Afghanistan. The U.S. has over 18,000 military contractors in Afghanistan. 1,500 of them are armed mercenaries. While President Biden said he'll withdraw troops from Afghanistan, it's not clear if he extends that to the thousands of contractors working in the Pentagon that are still in the country. I would think they'd want to leave because the Taliban will effing murder them if they stayed, because who's going to protect them? Yeah, they got 1,500 armed mercenaries, but that ain't numbers. That ain't numbers. Those guys can be bribed. Hate to tell you. I mean, I'm sure the soldiers could be bribed too, but they're a lot less likely to be bribed. I mean, contractors, essentially, you could just pay them. And they could say, okay, okay, I won't protect the place I'm supposed to protect. What are you going to do? I guess you could sue them. It's not illegal to accept a bribe if you're a civilian, I don't think. I guess it's a breach of contract, but yeah, I mean, they would be fools to stay. They'd be fools. They killed contractors back in the Bush years. Yeah, don't stay. America's first caucus targets big tech, mail-in voting, and Chinese Communist Party. This is MTG. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Super American. Now, of course, they're already smearing her as racist because she stupidly put in something about Anglo-Saxon values in her, in the description of America First. I don't know why they would put that. I mean, it's technically true, but it just sounds bad. The optics on it sound bad. And of course, the oversensitive snowflakes are calling it racist. I would have put English. English would have been more direct and historically accurate, and, maybe you could argue, well, it's really Anglo-Saxon, but I don't know why you needed to put that at all. I think you could have just put American values. But whatever. Everybody's calling her a racist now, as always. But she was kind of getting that before. And quite frankly, the racist trope isn't sticking anymore. So good luck when the real racists show up, you idiots. You woke morons, you woke tards. I'm not yelling at you watching my videos, of course. Just to clarify, I'm yelling at the people who will watch my videos and hate me because they tend to be woke idiots. But anyhow, checking out the headlines over at Gab. Another child killed by police. Hillary Clinton fans the flames after Chicago street gang Latin Kings threaten retaliation for shooting death of Adam Toledo. Shut up, Hillary. We should start that meme. Shut up, Hillary. Hashtag shut up, Hillary. I mean, this woman absolutely cannot avoid the spotlight. She loves it. She is like someone who's addicted to social media, except she's addicted to going on in television and giving her opinion. I mean, there are plenty of people who lost presidential elections. You ever hear from Walter Mondale, Michael Dukakis, or even Mitt Romney? And Mitt Romney's in the Senate. You don't hear half as much from them as you do from Hillary Clinton. Some of those guys are dead, I'm sure, but my point stands. Hate crimes against Asian Americans in LA more than doubled last year, LAPD reports. I wonder if that report includes the race of the people who committed those Asian hate crimes. It's yet an uncomfortable truth nobody's willing to face, unfortunately. And it's not about hate crimes. This idea of hate crimes, a special crime that's hate. It's about people getting assaulted, okay? People shouldn't get assaulted. It's terrible, regardless of the reasons. I mean, it's not like we assume you don't like the person if you assaulted them. Oh, I like you. North Korea has more nuclear weapons than ever. What should Biden do? Thanks, NBC News. You're trying to gin up the war in North Korea now? NBC News is the absolute worst now to me. I don't know why anybody would watch it. Bride in tears as Washington State governor rolls back county day before her wedding. Guess that means you can't have your wedding because the governor said so? That doesn't surprise me. But getting into the riots, Portland rioters set fire to Apple Store, smash up church, veggie grill, and historical society. Well, that ought to end racism and police shootings. Yeah. I try to tell some of my Democratic relatives, these are mostly white people. And they just go, no, that's not true. Yes, this is Antifa, especially in Portland. It's mostly white kids. They burned an Apple store, okay? They're not burning it because Apple has, for instance, connections to the Chinese government and probably uses some slave labor for some of their parts or whatever. No. They're not burning it because of that. They're burning it because they're commies. And they think, oh, this will help collapse the state. Those woke idiots don't understand that this is still being tolerated to a certain degree. Because Ted Wheeler, what's he going to do at this point? What's he gonna do? He's created an entire city for communists. Anybody who had any sense left. Certainly, if you're conservative, you probably ran from Portland as fast as you could. I know I have one commenter who's still living there. Dude, I think you should get out. I mean, I know you lived there for 40 years, but I think you should get out for now. I don't think there's ever a chance of recovering Portland. Not anymore. Unless you get a new government in. Unless you know, what I think would have to happen is, someone like Trump or DeSantis gets into the White House, starts a federal, first off, they'd have to clean out the FBI. If not, just disband it. Just get rid of it. But the FBI is very corrupt, and that's part of the problem. Because it would be the FBI's job to go in and root out the corruption in the city government there. So let's say, for instance, you had Trump or DeSantis back in. They clean things up at the FBI. They would appoint a special task force to go in and investigate what the hell's going on in Portland, right? And then they could make the connections between the protesters and them getting let out all the time. You'd see the corruption. You'd oust those people. You'd have this massive thing where you'd start throwing these guys in jail, indicting them, and then people would finally maybe elect somebody else. The very least, elect moderate Democrats who would then put the city back to where it was. Somebody who was law and order type. Maybe a Republican, if you could get somebody who's a Republican there. And then you'd have, a fight on your hands for a year or two. But eventually, all those people would go to jail or be so discouraged they would leave. Right? I mean, they've done this before. There was a time, and I remember this growing up, in the 70s, there was a real problem with gang violence. And people just, they would throw up their hands and say, well, what are you going to do? There's gangs. And eventually they cracked down. Same thing in the 80s in LA. There was just, gang violence was just everywhere, at all-time high. They cracked down on it. They created gang units. I mean, it's on the rise again because LA's gone woke and now they're dismantling the gang units. But, and what really needs to happen, of course, is these kids who join the gangs, they need to be given jobs. If they had jobs and a stake in the community, they wouldn't join gangs. If there was work, if there was a community, if it wasn't all fueled by drugs and violence, and this is why you should legalize drugs. Because if you legalize them, then these gangs wouldn't exist because you could get drugs legally, right? You wouldn't go to a poor neighborhood to buy your crack or cocaine or whatever. It probably wouldn't be crack. It would probably be some kind of cocaine, some kind of synthetic cocaine. And you could go buy it. Maybe you'd have to jump through some hoops and prove that you're an adult, or maybe you'd have to get a prescription, or maybe you'd have to get something. Who knows? But you'd be able to get it legally. And, these organized criminals, these organized gangs couldn't sustain themselves anymore. Because if you can get the drug legally, you won't go to poor areas where you could be robbed or killed or ripped off. You just won't go. It's just not worth it. So they don't have the money, so they won't have the money to buy guns. They don't have a reason to have the guns. They don't sell the drugs anymore. It's not worth it. Now, that doesn't mean there's no crime. There'd still be crime. I mean, it's a poor area. But the guns would eventually evaporate because guns, they have to be maintained. So yes, there would probably be a giant pile of guns left over from the drug prohibition era, but over time, they would just, either they'd be sold off, given away, or they would just rust until you couldn't use them anymore. And what would these guys do? Well, criminals, or opportunists, I'll say, human beings, we're all human, would eventually say, well, what's the next easiest thing I could do? It used to be I could sell drugs and make $1,000 or whatever in a week. What's the next thing I could do? Well, maybe they get a job. They might rob people. They might sell stuff illegally, but it'll be a lot less violent. It'll be a lot less money at stake. The cartels would collapse. They would hold no more power. They wouldn't be smuggling things across the border, other than people. Same thing with prostitution. You legalize that, all that collapses. It just collapses. Because now all the Johns go to a legal brothel. Why would you go to an illegal brothel? You can go to a legal one. Now, you could probably make it so expensive because of the government taxing it and permits and whatnot that you would still have somewhat of a black market, but if you did it on a national scale, it would still be pretty unsustainable because organized crime is about profits. It's about big profits. So it's not you could sell drugs cheaper, but there's not a lot of profit in doing a discount drug deal. It's not as much profit. You want high-end drug deals. And if it's constant, rip-offs and whatever, it's just not worth it. Eventually, just people get wise to it and say, I'd rather be safe than dead. Anyhow, that's my rant on crime. We may find signs of life on other planets in the next 5 to 10 years thanks to powerful new telescopes, claims researcher. Okay? Let me know when we could visit those planets. I think I want to get off. Ha ha. Asian left-wing journalist beaten by BLM mobs as crowd confronts Portland police at latest shooting spree. Oh, right. Andy No mentioned this in his Twitter post. Andy knows him. And a lot of times, back when Andy was on the ground, any Asian guy was getting mistaken for Andy No. Another, clue that the Antifa guys are very racist, and the BLM. It says BLM Mob, but, in Portland, they're kind of almost one and the same. Still, although, yesterday's video, they're splitting up. They're splitting up. Dante Wright, Adam Toledo protests turned violent in cities across the U.S. Yeah, watch your A. Stay out of the city this weekend, I would say. Stay out of the city all this week. Get away from the cities. Spanish-speaking media outlets are shilling for court packing. That's according to big league politics. I'm sure it's at least partially true. Again, the Democrats think they own Hispanic vote and the black vote, and but it may be too much. And I don't think Nancy Pelosi's totally on board, so hopefully they won't even attempt it, and it'll just fail. I think it will fail, but if it succeeds, BLM mob descends on Lori Lightfoot's neighborhood, clash with Chicago police. Oh, then the police stop them. Then the police in Chicago have something to say to you if you show up to Lori Lightfoot's neighborhood. Oh, I can't get a haircut now. One of the worst mayors. Another one that probably should go to prison. I wonder 50 years from now how they'll talk about these mayors. I wonder how they see themselves sometimes. They're just awful people. Cops blast violent BLM Antifa hoodlums with pepper spray in Brooklyn Center. So, yeah, that makes sense. They're amping up. They're amping up. So this is going to be the summer, I think, after they announce the Chauvin trial results. This is going to be the year it turns around. Minnesota, the same state, or Minneapolis, the same city that wanted to defund the police, is going to turn on a dime. It's going to crush these protesters. They're going to be crushed. You watch. System irregularity leaves Twitter users in the dark and support accounts down as outage continues. Yeah, there was a weird, massive outage on Twitter, and I couldn't post things. And then it was saying, oh, you already posted that, which was weird. So, I think it's back up online for those of you on Twitter. Stay off of it if you're not. North Carolina rioters start fire outside police headquarters. Not good. You would think North Carolina would be a place that would be pretty red. But, there's always colleges. That's where all this is coming from. It's all coming from the colleges. So, if you think the South is, a bunch of hillbillies who hate black people, you're wrong. They're just as woke. And they're just normal people, quite frankly. Chauvin trial. Law professor says reasonable doubt exists. Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of reasonable doubt exists. I think he's going to get off. I think it doesn't matter if they give him a tiny sentence. They're fooling themselves if they think, he got manslaughter. He's going to get 5 years. Oh, okay. Let's go home. No. They could sentence him to 30 years, put him on death row, and the riots are still going to happen. They're going to happen. It won't matter. They won't go home. It won't be enough. Because then they'll say, what about Dante Wright? What about that? It won't be enough. You can't control a mob. There's no one speaking for this mob. Okay? It's not like people compare it to the civil rights movement. No, it's not like that at all. The civil rights movement was organized, right? And at the head of it was MLK, essentially. He was at the head of it. So when MLK could negotiate to a certain extent, when he said something, people would go, oh, okay, we've made some progress here, right? When the civil rights legislation came down, MLK could say, this is a good thing, or the leaders, I'll say. The leaders could say, even after he was assassinated, the remaining leaders could say, well, we've got something here. This is a positive step. Everybody calm the F down. You can't say that to these people. That's what people don't get. This isn't an organized protest. This is Antifa, BLM style, and who's going to listen to BLM leadership? A bunch of idiot Marxists with $1 million homes. Okay, nobody, I've got my 5 homes now, so everybody calm down. Nobody's going to listen to that. They're emotional. It's a mob. It's a mob. It's not a protest. It's a mob. It's a riotous mob. The only thing that would satisfy them would be to pull every cop out of the building and, do horrible things. I'm not going to say it on YouTube. And even that wouldn't stop. Then that would just encourage them to do more. So this isn't going to stop until you put your foot down and say, this is the law. This is what the court decided. You must abide by that. Go home or you will be arrested. That's what needs to happen. And they do need to go home if the court rules, regardless of how it rules. You have to accept the court's decision. Or these people, they don't accept the court's decision because they don't recognize the state as a power. They want to tear down the state and start a new state. Right, Joan? Man, your breath stinks so much. I could smell it just talking to the screen. Oh, God. Why don't you go get a breath mint? Okay? Go get a breath mint. I'm sure you'll find something to lick. But let's continue. It was worse than we thought. No one met Japanese Prime Minister in the White House door except the stationary army guard. Yeah, I don't know if I believe that. It's probably just a little dig from the Gateway Pundit, but it is pretty funny. CNN's Don Lemon from Breitbart. You don't see racist flourishing in the Democratic Party. Yeah, what are you talking about? That's the only place you see him flourishing now. Hello, Robert Byrd. I mean, he was never kicked out of the Democratic Party, and in fact, Joe Biden spoke at his funeral, did his eulogy. Hillary Clinton called him a mentor. So please, shut up, Don Lemon. My God. Study shows deadly car crashes rise with legalization of marijuana. Well, duh. Probably. Probably would rise if you legalize drugs. I mean, look, there's always going to be consequences. There's no way you could stop people from being stupid. I mean, do you want deadly car crashes? Or car crashes, I should say, some of which will be deadly, or would you rather have people shot in the street? I mean, I don't want either, but it seems like the car crashes are slightly less bad, probably less numerous, probably a way that we can address the driving situation more so than the drug war that doesn't work. Black Lives Matter co-founder defends ritzy home purchase. I live my life in direct support of black people. Yeah, the ones related to you. This is the greatest story ever. You're such hypocrites. You're such hypocrites. Welcome to equality. See, now black people have rich people who are a-holes too. Isn't that great? Hollywood celebrities renew push for gun control following FedEx shooting. It's a national disgrace. Shut up. Kamala Harris, black women are dying in childbirth because of racism. Okay. Yeah, you know, the more I think about it, the more I think Kamala will actually be worse. But, I mean, Jesus. San Antonio police officer shot in hand, 2 suspects dead, 3rd injured. I'm sure there'll be a riot over it. Joe Biden, who in God's name needs a gun that can hold 20 rounds? Who are you to say, Joe Biden? Oh, right, you're the president, so you think you're like the dictator of America. Joe Biden is so corrupt. He doesn't give a crap about the Constitution. Doesn't give a crap. Spending on security by Trump critics, Swalwell, Schiff, and Cheney surges. Well, I can understand that. Look, there's a lot of people on the left and right who effing hate these guys. And now that the left are in power, yeah, I could see Swalwell, Schiff, and Cheney beefing up their security a little bit. So, I mean, they're probably in danger. They're probably getting more death threats than ever. They probably all get death threats, but those guys in particular, probably getting more. They are a-holes. I wouldn't threaten them. Don't threaten them. But, you know. Robert De Niro is struggling to keep up with wife's thirst for Stella McCartney, which is a clothing line, divorce lawyer says. Yeah, Yellow Flash has a great video on this. Apparently, Robert De Niro is getting his teeth kicked in by his wife, who spends, he claims, $250,000 a month. You know, it's not a bottomless pit of money. I mean, these guys have a lot of money, but they also spend a lot of money. So, you know, but this is unfortunate, you know. I think what happens a lot of times, these guys, they hook up with beautiful women, they marry them, and then when they get older, you know, they're not, it's just like any other divorce. It's just not as exciting. And the women are just like, well, I can do better. And I can have your money and get a young husband. So, as a divorce guy, I totally cannot dunk on Robert De Niro. I feel bad for the dude. I genuinely do, even though he's turned into kind of an a-hole, and now he's going to have to do every movie they offer him. It's a shame. It's a shame, but here's the thing. Robert De Niro, to some extent, did this to himself. He lives in California. He supports Democrats. Democrats made these family court laws that essentially, take everything from the bread earners. They're ridiculous. They're overcompensating the women. But he supports that, so pay, Robert, and shut up. Biden admin to ramp up experiments using, let's just say, baby parts that, came from babies that didn't become babies. So that's, again, it's taxpayer funded. It's a complicated issue, but for people who live in this country who don't want to pay taxes to do certain things, I think we can all agree that people on the left don't want their taxes going to certain things. People on the right don't want their taxes to go into certain things. So why not have that happen? Like, let's cut the taxes, not have our money go to either camp's things, and then make people happy. But see, that won't happen. Widening trust gap between public and media. Yeah, I guess so, Fox News. Capitol rioter takes first public plea deal, agrees to cooperate with authorities. Well, look, you're going to take a plea deal. You're probably going to have to do that. I don't know what those rioters did other than be a-holes. Biden vows further actions on Russia after allegedly nixing warship movement. Joan, I got to finish the headlines. Biden is a withered old man. Nobody, the world doesn't treat him as serious as they did Trump. Trump understood the application of power. Biden is he's campaigning. He doesn't know anything else. Yes, see, Joan agrees. White House defends UN ambassador. Most people recognize history of systematic racism in America. Thanks, Jen Psaki, you redheaded moron. The White House defended UN's ambassadors Linda Thomas Greenfield after she said white supremacy was woven into America's founding documents. Just shut up. Stop talking about race. Okay? This is the ironic thing. When you look back on history, like 50 years from now, they'll look back and they'll say, oh, like in the 90s and 2000s, America was pretty not racist and doing okay. And then 9/11 happened, and what the heck happened? I know, Joe. 9/11. She gets furious. Democrats pressure Joe Biden to forgive $500K of student loan debt. I don't think he will. NBC News, FedEx attacker ID'd as Brandon Scott Hole. Okay. A 20-year-old kid. Not good. Not good. Probably mentally ill. I would imagine. That's my guess. BLM activists ask people ready to get blood on their hands. Oh boy. Not good. Yeah, it's going to be bad. Get out of Minneapolis. Hundreds of anti-police protesters marched in D.C. So, yeah, you got D.C., Minneapolis, of course, New York. Haven't heard much in Philly, and that's like right near me. But I'm sure there'll be some marches. Philly's a little different. They got a whole housing thing that they're working on, too. There are a lot of Antifa guys there, but I think a lot of them go to New York, quite frankly. So, definitely New York. Definitely L.A., Oakland. So, watch yourself. And check in Daily Mail. Hunt for thugs who sprayed 4 victims with pepper spray in abhorrent homophobic attacks at KFC. Well, that seems terrible. Why would you spray pepper spray in a KFC? This is in the UK, I assume. Weird. That's just terrible. Well, that's about it. And it sounds like Joan wants to do something, so I have to go. Make sure you check us out on Bitchute and Rumble. We'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully, the riots won't be too bad.